Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the live reading of Alone on the Wall by Alex Honnold with David Roberts. If you have not listened to the first few episodes, as I say every time, highly recommend going back and catching up to this point. Today, if I can ever find it, we're going to be starting Chapter 3, titled Fear and Loving in Las Vegas. Ah, yes, I am no stranger to fear and loving in Las Vegas. We're probably going to get through about half of this chapter today. That seems to be the trend. Trying to keep these from being too long, but we'll just kind of see how it goes. So let's jump right into Chapter 3. As Alex began to win a small measure of fame for his bold free solos, he started to taste the rewards of sponsorship. The first company to put him on board through the championing of his climbing buddy Brad Barledge was Black Diamond, the Utah-based firm that manufactures high-tech climbing gear as well as ski equipment and outdoor apparel. In the years to follow, Alex would win sponsorship from La Sportiva, Cliff Bar, New England Ropes, and, most important, the North Face, whose dream team, officially known as the Global Team Athletes, constitutes a roster of stellar rock climbers and mountaineers that is the envy of young aspirants worldwide. I apologize for the world's loudest car going by, which also somehow took so much longer than it should have to go by my house. But, you know, it's ambient sound. It's all part of the experience. Just sink into it. Sink into the ambiance. In 2014, the Ball Watch Company, whose wristwatches fetch prices upward of $2,500, ran full-page ads in the New York Times Magazine, featuring a photo of Alex standing on Half Dome's Thank God ledge, accompanied by the claim, "With no ropes and no protective gear, there is simply no room for error. That's why a dependable timepiece like Ball Watch is important in an environment with truly adverse conditions." Alex endorsed the product with the pithy phrase, "The watch that rocks." Yes, that is exactly how you market climbing to the world. Exactly right. Even though he never wears a watch of any kind on his wrist when he climbs. Because that's stupid. Why would you? Are you trying to lose your hand? Anyways. In 2008, Boulder-based Sender Films, founded 9 years earlier by Peter Mortimer as a bare-bones do-it-yourself video company, took notice of Alex. By then, Sender was putting out adventure films that were as well-crafted and as authentic as anything of their kind produced in this country or abroad. As Mortimer recalls, we were hanging out in Yosemite a lot. Alex's solos of the Rostrum and Astroman were on our radar. We always have our ear to the ground, hoping to find the next hot young climber. Isn't that true for everyone, really? Aren't we all just trying to find the next hot young climber? Then when he soloed Moonlight Buttress, he really got our attention. Mortimer adds, "Everybody else in our business was cranking out films about bouldering and sport climbing. I wasn't so interested in that. What I wanted to film was danger climbing, big walls, big range mountaineering on the cutting edge, and of course, free soloing. For a new film titled The Sharp End, Mortimer and partner Nick Rosen established a corps of strong young American rock climbers and set out for the Ardspak, a massif of steep sandstone towers just inside the Czech Republic near the German border, where it merges with the legendary, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. It's Elbsen Steinberg. I suppose I could just watch the Sharp End. The Sharp End is climbing jargon for going first on the rope, as the leader typically takes all the serious risks. The Sharp End is a glorious smorgasbord of wild exploits performed by adventurers in the United States and Europe. The episodes include trad death routes, extremely deficient in protection, in El Dorado Canyon near Boulder, long and sketchy aid climbing routes in Yosemite, alpine adventures on untouched spires in the Shafat Fortress of India, wingsuit base jumping off precipices in Switzerland, and free soloing, though the star of the film is not Alex but Steph Davis, who solves the 510-plus per vertical sanctuary on the Diamond on Colorado's Longs Peak. Alex's role in the film is little more than a cameo appearance, but it dramatically foreshadows the stardom towards which he was headed. In fact, Sender chose for its movie jacket a still photo of Alex leading a desperate-looking pitch. Now, again, I see this upcoming paragraph here, this first sentence specifically, has many words that I'm not going to be able to pronounce, so just bear with me. But the Adderspack and Elbsensteinberg thrust out of the forest along the river Elbe, southeast of Dresden, in a wild burst of dark gray pinnacles. There, during the first 2 decades of the 20th century, a cadre of hard men, nice phrasing, A cadre of hard men whose climbing culture was utterly insulated even from their peers in the Alps put up the most difficult rock routes anywhere in the world. As they did so, they developed a local style bound by ironclad ethics, unlike that of any other scene. Americans and Western Europeans discovered the Dresden area only in the late 1960s, and when some of the best outsiders ventured there to sample that scene, they were uniformly impressed and intimidated. By 2008, some 40 years later, the purism of the Eastern German and Czech locals still ruled the crags. In the Elbsensteinberg, big ring bolts drilled frighteningly far apart, as much as 20 or 30 meters, form the only fixed anchors and protection. Pitons, nuts, and cams are not allowed. The only removable protection a climber is allowed to place is knotted nylon slings jammed into cracks, a practice with which American, French, and Swiss climbers were wholly unfamiliar. To make matters worse, or purer, chalk for the fingers is not allowed. Lacking decent rock shoes, the Dresden climbers put up many of their hardest routes barefoot. These guys are obviously savages. No chalk, no shoes, no gear. Mortimer and Rosen rounded up their team of American rock stars, including Cedar Wright, Renan Ozturk, Matt Siegel, Topher Donahue, and Heidi Wirtz. Alex went along as the promising rookie. For the film, the directors lured 61-year-old Bernd Arnold, the grandmaster of the Elbsensteinberg, from the late 1960s through the 70s and 80s to act as a guide for the awestruck Americans. In the film, although Arnold speaks virtually no English, he gleefully shows his charges the ropes, as it were, encouraging them to take off their shoes and scramble barefoot to get used to the strange rock. Arnold's comrades blithely underscore the seriousness of the routes with gallows humor. As one of them says, in accented English, "If you fall, you can become legend." The climactic scene of this episode in the Sharp End unfolds after the Americans have succeeded on some of the classic routes, but now want to make their own mark to salvage a bit of pride. They gather beneath a sharp vertical arête, a route that even the locals declare too dangerous. The talk is ominous and fearful. Wearing a hoodie, looking like the antisocial nerd Ben Smalley remembered from high school, Alex is almost silent. But then he quietly spouts, "We've been here for an hour, talking about how hard and how scary this is. We should just go do it." So Alex takes the Sharp End. His progress up the terrifying arête, superbly filmed, uses his buddy's spontaneous comments as voiceover. Cedar Wright says, he's hesitating there for 10 minutes. He's looking at a 90-foot fall. He could hit the ground. In the film, you can hear Alex's short bursts of panting breath, but the smooth, exquisitely calculated movement is a work of art. Man, what's up with them diesel trucks? They are out there tonight, really rolling. They really be out here. Anyways, sorry about that. It was loud as hell. Where were we? So rudely interrupted. Fear for his safety transmutes into his comrades' praise. Watching Alex is pretty inspiring, one says, because he keeps it together so well. Another, Alex is in a different headspace. His ability to stay calm and not get pumped all the way to the top. And after Alex finishes the climb, yet another, "That's not a pitch I want to lead." Cedar Wright, "I'm definitely a little jealous." Wordless, Alex stands on the summit of the spire and grins. After Alex free soloed Half Dome in September 2008, Mortimer and Rosen decided they wanted to shape a whole film around the prodigy's extraordinary deeds. But no one had witnessed Alex's climbs on either Moonlight Buttress or Half Dome. The solution was self-evident. Approach Alex and ask him whether he'd be willing to reenact passages on those two routes for the camera. Mortimer remembers he wasn't reluctant at all. He was up for it. "Yeah," he told us, "I love the idea of getting some footage on those walls." The logistical problems of filming that footage, however, were monumental. By spring of 2009, when Sender was ready to shoot Moonlight Buttress, there were several parties on the route, climbing it the old-fashioned style, with plenty of aid. Fortunately, those parties were toiling low on the route. Mortimer and still photographer Seelan Serbo decided to rappel down some 400 feet from the summit, hang on parallel ropes, then film and photograph Alex, free soloing the upper pitches, close up with the aid parties well out of the frame. Alex would rappel down those 400 feet, take off his harness, and start soloing upward. Mortimer had deep misgivings about what he was asking Alex to do. What if he falls to his death, he worried, just for the sake of our film? I can't imagine how I could live with that. His film crew was equally apprehensive. As we gathered in Springdale the night before the reenactment, we were completely stressed out. We were at a pizza parlor. We waited until Alex went to the bathroom, and then we said to each other, I don't know if we should do this. When Alex came back, I started to ask, Alex, are you sure? He burst out, you guys are such pussies. You mean I'll have to call someone else to shoot this? The passages Alex soloed for the camera were the 512 pitches above the crux, 180-foot inside corner, where a perfect finger crack, into which he locked his first digits, had given him much exhilaration when he'd first soloed the route the previous April. Mortimer. It was cold and it was windy. The exposure up there at the top of Moonlight Buttress is crazy. It's as vertigo-inducing as anything on El Cap. While we filmed, just a few feet away from Alex, we were super careful not to move an inch, so as not to distract him. You don't want to drop a lens cap or even knock loose the tiniest stone. Even so, Mortimer and his cameraman were gripped. The finger-locked digits, the feet pasted flat against the smooth wall, seemed to give Alex only the most marginal purchase on the world. Below him stretched an 800-foot void. If he fell, he might strike nothing before slamming into the ground at the base of the wall. At that moment, Alex turned to the camera and said, So do you want me to make this look like it's hard for me? According to Mortimer, Alex was actually thinking, oh, those guys must be so bored. A little later, Alex jammed his knee into the crack, then suddenly let go with both hands. No hands knee bar, baby, he exulted. This guy's a savage. I know we already knew that, but fucking savage. A few months later, a slightly different crew, including Mortimer's directing partner Nick Rosen and cameraman Tim Kemple, gathered to shoot Alex reenacting parts of the regular Northwest face route on Half Dome. In the interim, two of America's best mountaineers, Johnny Kopp and Micah Dash, both featured in the Sarp End as they explored the Shafat Fortress in India, and the Chamonix Agili, I don't know how to say that, sorry, in France, disappeared on Mount Edgar in western China, along with cinematographer Wade Johnson, who had worked on the Sharp End. Living in Boulder, all three were close friends of the entire staff of Sender Films. Not only that, but Sender was crafting a film around the attempt on the massive unclimbed southeast face of Mount Edgar. It was only when the trio missed a return flight out of Chengdu that a rescue effort was launched. Top climbers from Boulder and elsewhere, including Nick Rosen, immediately flew to China to initiate a search. They were aided by Chinese troops. On June 7, 2009, Kopp's body was found at the base of the wall. Johnson's the next day. Excuse me. It seemed clear that a gigantic avalanche of mixed rock, snow, and ice had scoured the wall, engulfing the climbers. Dash's body was never found. Remarkably, much of Johnson's footage was recovered intact at base camp. Mortimer and Rosen used it to put together a film in homage to their friends. Point of No Return is a haunting, unforgettable work. Knowing the tragic fate that awaits the three young climbers, you watch their tearful goodbyes to girlfriends at the airport, their boisterous antics at the base camp, with a sense of mounting dread. But you also see the monstrously scary, nearly continuous barrage of falling rocks and ice that made the trio decide to abandon the route before even coming to grips with it. It's torturous to learn that the men's final mission was simply a scramble up to a cache above base camp to retrieve equipment they had stowed a few days before. Watching them head off to their doom, you want to scream at the screen, just go home, leave the fucking gear. In the wake of the disaster, which shook the whole American climbing community, Mortimer and Rosen approached Half Dome with Alex in a somber, even psyched-out mood. We had absolutely no stomach, says Mortimer, for anything crazy or on the edge. We were going to restrict the filming for the easier pitches down low, then wrap down a few hundred feet from the summit to film Alex finishing the zigzags and traversing Thank God Ledge. Despite the fears and sorrows of the filmmakers, Alone on the Wall comes across as a blithe celebration of climbing. It's even lighthearted in places. The film is a minor masterpiece. No one can watch it, even for the fourth or fifth time, without feeling palms turn sweaty as Alex performs his ropeless dance on vertical rock. And the film never fails to inspire a heated debate among climbers and non-climbers alike over the ethics of free soloing. Some non-climbers simply cannot bear to watch the film. A testament to Mortimer and Rosen's cinematic skill lies in the fact that most viewers don't realize they're seeing a reenactment. Instead, the film looks and feels like a documentary of the two boldest exploits of 21st century climbing. For comic counterpoint, the film intercuts the footage on Moonlight Buttress and Half Dome with Alex giving a tour of the Econoline van that serves as his home. Narrator Rosen, do you have girls in here a lot? Alex, guffawing, do I look like I have girls in here a lot? and with a visit to Alex's childhood home in Sacramento, where his mother proudly shows off all the magazine covers featuring her son, while he cringes in embarrassment. That sounds about par for the course for Alex Honnold, really. The film closes lightheartedly, too, with Alex eating food out of a bowl with a twig in lieu of cutlery, as he riffs about being like a tool-using chimp using a stick to ferret out ants. This is what makes us human, he cracks. The heart of Alone on the Wall, of course, lies in the dazzling footage of Alex on his two big walls. Interspersed with his action are sound bites from Alex's peers. Says Cedar Wright, one of Alex's best friends, "When you meet Alex Honnold, you're going to be like, huh? This guy is a bumbling, dorky, awkward goofball. Until he steps on the rock, then he's literally a whole other person. He becomes this poised, graceful, calculated, badass dude. John Long, the Stone Master, who shared in the first one-day ascent of the nose on El Cap in 1975, marvels about Alex's free solo of Half Dome. It took some vision to get up there, but it took some freaking balls to actually do it." Climbing buddy Nick Martino declares, "Freaking Honnold is walking on the moon, as far as I'm concerned." As the footage of the actual climbing spools by, Alex comments in voiceover, "There's all the little things you have to think about, like left, right, which sequence you're doing, but there's nothing I'm really thinking about, I'm just doing it. And I love the simplicity of soloing. You never climb better than when you're soloing. And doubt is the biggest danger in soloing. As soon as you hesitate, you're screwed." But even Alex seems to at last realize the magnitude of his deeds as, standing on the summit of Moonlight Buttress, grinning with happiness, he utters, "When I think about it, it's freaking rad." The climax of the film dramatizes the stall-out that gave Alex his 5 minutes of very private hell, only 150 feet below the top of Half Dome. But Mortimer and Rosen were not about to ask Alex to repeat that terrifying sequence of miserly smears on the 512 slab above Thank God Ledge, where, on September 6, 2008, he had confronted the very real possibility of falling almost 2,000 feet to his death. Instead, in the film, Thank God Ledge itself serves as the locus for the freakout. As Alex sidles carefully away from the camera along the narrowing ledge, facing out with his back to the wall, he pauses. In voiceover, he narrates, "Basically, when I'm soloing, normally I like to have a mental armor. You could say I'm in the zone. Something that's protecting my head from thinking too much. And for some reason," he laughs at the memory, "on Half Dome I ran out of what armor I had. I had a mini nervous breakdown." In the film, the invisible cameraman, Tim Kemple, tells Alex that he can traverse back to safety if he doesn't like the feel of this predicament. But Alex shuffles on, across ground that in reality was fairly easy for him. And then soon he's bounding across the summit, alone in his joy. In only 6 years, that moment of the film footage on Thank God Ledge became one of the most iconic images in climbing history. Sorry about my phone going off in the background, by the way. Sender Films put a still from the sequence on the cover of their boxed set First Ascent, which contains 4 other films, besides Alone on the Wall and Point of No Return. A couple years later, in its May 2012 issue, National Geographic ran a feature on the younger generation of Yosemite hotshots, for which photographer Jimmy Chin duplicated the shot. It made the cover of the magazine. In the 2014 Ball Watch ad, yet another version of Alex on Thank God Ledge illustrated the truly adverse conditions facing the world's explorers. Within the last year and a half, that image has spawned a craze of imitations, under the rubric Honnolding, as climbers pose on their own ledges much closer to the ground, their backs to the wall, feet together, arms stiff at their sides, knees weak, palms sweaty. Just kidding, it doesn't say that. Blank looks on their faces, as well as a number of goofy parodies, in which subjects assume the same pose standing on toilet tanks, refrigerators, stepladders, and the like. The only comparable phenomenon in recent years was the vogue of T-bowing, kneeling in prayer, one knee on the ground, elbow on the other knee, closed hand pressed to bent forehead, in homage to the born-again NFL quarterback. After Tim Tebow moved off the field and onto ESPN, however, that craze waned fast. Says Mortimer about the original photo of Alex on Thank God Ledge, something about that position brings home to everybody what the pros do on big walls, better than a conventional climbing shot does. It captures the vulnerability of it all. It's as if Alex is standing there, facing God, completely vulnerable. Alone on the Wall promptly won grand prizes at film festivals ranging from Telluride, Colorado to Trento, Italy, and Kendal, England. As perhaps the most dazzling presentation in the annual Real Rock Tour, jointly sponsored by Sender Films and New York-based Big Up Productions, the film was screened in scores of venues all over the country in the fall of 2009. By then, Real Rock had already acquired a cult following. More than the buzz about Alex's exploits humming on websites such as supertopo.com, more even than a feature article in Outside Magazine and the cover shot for National Geographic, the film put Alex on a map that covered far broader terrain than the insular world of hardcore climbing. It's hard to think of a comparable case in the recent past of a young extreme athlete morphing from complete obscurity to considerable fame in only 2 years. The film was the main impetus that convinced the CBS News program 60 Minutes to film a profile of Alex, which aired on October 2nd, 2011. At the time of that widely watched TV segment, Alex was only 26 years old. For several years, Alex had kept a Facebook page. Now, with this new explosion of media exposure, the page was inundated with shoutouts and queries from strangers. As Alex said in 2010, I had to erase myself from Facebook. It was too crazy. I was getting 20 friend requests a day. Some kid would ask, "Hey, what kind of chalk bag should I buy?" You hate to blow him off, but what can you say? To this day, that kid's question is still unanswered. He still does not know what kind of chalk bag he should buy, and thus has actually quit climbing, and you can blame Alex Honnold for that. True story. I'm the source for that, by the way, if you're looking for citations. In September 2009, before Alex erased himself, a 24-year-old woman attended the Real Rock Tour at a Tucson screening. Stacy Pearson, who worked as a nurse in a local hospital, was also a serious distance runner, having competed in 4 marathons, clocking a best time of 3 hours and 25 minutes. As Pearson recalled in 2010, I'd never really heard of Alex Honnold. A friend invited me to Real Rock, but I almost didn't go. We arrived late. Alex was just one of the many characters in the films, but I thought, that guy is really cool. I went home and Googled him. I discovered I could find him on Facebook. I wrote to him, "I saw you on the film tour. I don't know anything about you, but I thought what you did was really respectful and cool." Pearson got no answer for days, as Alex was in Siberia attending an international climbing meet. However, eventually, he sent back a few words. "So I asked if I could friend him," said Pearson. He accepted. He'd seen my picture and things about me, like my bio, where I called myself a future ultra-marathoner. He wrote back, "Are you really into ultra-marathoning?" It's funny, I literally heard that in his voice. "Are you really into ultra-marathoning?" Anyways, that was a bad Alex Honnold impression, I apologize. We started emailing every few days, Pearson recalled, telling each other all about ourselves. Alex was in Spain, then he was in China, where they don't allow Facebook. So our emails grew longer and longer. Finally, we did a video chat. It was nerve-wracking. I was nervous, and I could tell he was too. He had the hood on his sweater shirt up. "Hi," he said. "What's up?" At the time, Alex had no steady girlfriend. There had been occasional brief liaisons, including a fling with Katie Brown, who a decade earlier had dazzled the climbing world as a teen prodigy, winning the World Junior Championship in Quebec at the age of 14. 3 weeks of wild torment, Alex later described his affair with Brown. "I was over-eager and under-suave." Over-eager and under-suave is a fantastic shirt idea, by the way. Alex was coming home on December 4th, 2009, Pearson recalled. He mentioned that he was going to enter the California International Marathon in Sacramento 2 days later to test his running capability. That seemed like a perfect excuse for us to meet at last, so I tried to sign up for the marathon, but unfortunately it was sold out. I decided to come to California anyways. I was a little nervous, but also excited. I was about to do something I'd never done before. I was waiting by the curb at the Oakland airport. Alex called to say he was 15 minutes late. Finally, he pulled up in his van. We may have hugged. It felt awkward. I was wearing a zebra print cardigan. Many months later, Alex told me that what I wore that day matched up to his standards of a hot girl. Yes, we all love a girl in a zebra print cardigan. It probably helped that our first time together was in the context of Alex's full-on family. His mom, Deirdre, his sister, Stasia. It made things easier. The first night, Alex gave a slideshow for a small crowd at a pizza joint in Santa Rosa. I met a few of his friends. One of them said, "Alex is a great guy." I answered, "Yeah, I've only known him for a day." I waited at the halfway point of the marathon. When Alex came by, he gasped that he was starving. We ran together for a while. As we passed a guy carrying some food, Alex asked if he could have the banana in his hand, which the guy gladly handed over. Then we passed a small aid station with a few goodies. Alex's eyes grew wide when he spotted a bowl of M&Ms. He grabbed a handful and shoved them in his mouth. That's how I learned that his biggest weakness, so he says, is that he has an incurable sweet tooth. I'm going to go ahead and stop there for today. We are right where I planned, actually, about halfway through this chapter. We've got about 10 more pages. I'm trying to keep these videos a little shorter, as I said last episode. So here on page 70, we're going to wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you guys next week. Same time. Later.